If you guys want one-on-one training, online training, or nutritional coaching, please head on over to my website, jpfitnesspro.com. Just go to the services tab and select which one you would like. You can also subscribe to my newsletter and contact me through my website as well. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks. What is up, you guys? JP here. Weightlifting belts. They're always a fairly hot topic of debate wherever you look. You may have worn them before and a friend told you, oh, you shouldn't be wearing those, or they make your core weak, or some people say, yes, wear them, they help with your lifts, or they protect your core. I've heard just about every single differentiating opinion on weightlifting belts, and there was a point during my lifting career, my just general lifting career, of whether I would go with a belt, I would go without a belt. I'd hear this opinion or I'd hear that opinion. But I finally kind of came to the conclusion about weightlifting belts in general. So I'm going to talk about that, and I'm also going to go over how you guys should wear a belt for the people that do. So the first thing to address is to wear a weight belt or to not wear a weight belt. And before I even do that, I should say is even a better question would be, do you need a weightlifting belt? The first answer is no, you do not need a weightlifting belt of any kind. You don't need it. Now, I use that word specifically because, again, there's lots of things you don't necessarily need. You don't need a weightlifting belt. You can lift with, we can lift without a weightlifting belt. We have our own internal weight belt, the transverse abdominis. You can still lift extremely heavy without a weightlifting belt. And just due to the principle of specificity, I think that without wearing a weightlifting belt, you may be hindered a crumb versus someone who gets used to a belt. But at the same time, I still think that, again, due to the principle of specificity, you're going to just get accustomed to and good at bracing yourself without a weightlifting belt, that I feel like it's not going to be that big of a deficit on the people who don't wear weightlifting belts. So you don't need a belt. Now, should you wear a weightlifting belt? And that answer is it depends. If you're someone who plans to be in powerlifting, or you ever plan to do a competition with powerlifting, then personally, I would recommend you wear a weightlifting belt on at least the big three. You know, your squat, your bench, your squat, your deadlift, and the bench is if you can or you can't. I don't do that. I see a lot of lifters who don't do that either. But at a bare minimum, I would recommend you do it on your squat and deadlift. Now, again, that's just what I would recommend. If you're someone who plans to compete and you don't want to, that's fine. You know, Yuri Belkin, I'm pretty sure he's put up 1,000-pound deadlift in competition before, or 900 or 1,000-pound deadlift, and he doesn't use a weightlifting belt during his deadlifts. I'm almost 100% positive of that. So someone can get close to 1,000 or 1,000 pounds during a deadlift without a belt. Anyone can do it. But again, if I just had to recommend one for someone who wants to do powerlifting, I would definitely recommend it for your squat and your deadlifts for sure. The research has just definitively shown that when you wear a weightlifting belt and you get good with a weightlifting belt, you're probably going to be able to lift more if you get good with a weightlifting belt versus not wearing a lifting belt. So I would definitely recommend that. So if you're someone aimed towards that, you know, if you want to do powerlifting, I would recommend it. Now, if you don't plan to do powerlifting, let's just go to the next step. Let's just say you don't plan to do powerlifting, but you train like a powerlifter, and you like numbers, you like getting heavy, you like lifting lots of weight, and you like testing yourself with personal records. I would still probably recommend you doing it during like the heavy compound movements. You know, I use it personally during a squat, deadlift, and my overhead press. That's it. I don't use it during anything else. I train my core separately, and obviously I don't work during that, but I train my core, and any other lift I don't do it. I don't use it during bent over rows, nothing. So just overhead press, deadlift, and squat. So, and I would recommend that you use it on those because, again, it's going to increase performance. Now, that's even less important to do so there. So if you're not doing powerlifting, but you're just like your general population, you like lifting heavy weight, you do, your focus is a lot on strength, then you don't have to. Again, that's just up to you. Some people, for example, like Clarence Kennedy, doesn't like using a lifting belt because he says it doesn't make him feel like an athlete, which, again, that's going to decrease his adherence to workout, which is perfectly fine. If you simply don't like the look of the weightlifting belt, and you're not going to be a powerlifter, that's fine. Even if you want to be a powerlifter and if you don't want to use a weightlifting belt, that's perfectly fine too. You just have to understand that if you can get good with a weightlifting belt, you're probably giving up a little bit of weight that you could be pushing with it on. Now, the last step is you're someone who trains, but you don't personally care about lifting for heavy weight. You're just specifically training for hypertrophy and physique development, which I still think in hypertrophy and physique development, strength should be a small component of it, but that's not your prime goal for working out. Then in that case, I really wouldn't recommend you wear a weightlifting belt in that case. So again, it's as simple as that. If your goal is not primarily strength, it's just to get jacked, you don't need to wear a weightlifting belt. Again, I could argue that when you wear a weightlifting belt, again, you can push out those last little extra numbers that you wouldn't without a weightlifting belt, which is going to increase your training volume over time, which is going to help you make more gains in the long run. So if you're a hypertrophy athlete and you're on the fence and you don't really care to wear one or not to wear one, you just want to know what's going to get you the most gains, then I would recommend a weightlifting belt. But if you're someone who's just like, I'm going to have to buy one, I don't want to buy one, I wouldn't even worry about it. It's definitely not that important. Personally, I use one. Some recommendations for a weightlifting belt in general is if you're going to use them in any of those scenarios, I don't recommend you just put it on and then walk around and wear a weightlifting belt through all your exercises. I know some people, they just slap it around their waist and they'll be using it during curls, they'll be using it during bench press, decline bench press, machines, and I just think that develops bad habits for you and your posture and then regulating your core throughout your day. I just recommend you do it during the specific big compound movements that you're training specifically for strength, and that's it. Again, if I had to pick a couple off the top of my head, it would be squat, deadlift, and then overhead press. That'd probably be it. I wouldn't recommend using it. Maybe bent over row, but I don't use it during bent over row. But again, all those exercises have a similar theme. So I wouldn't recommend you wear your belt through everything, even if you do use it. The second recommendation I have is I don't recommend you, if you're going to use it, and even if you don't use it, I recommend you train your core on different occasions just to keep your core strong. And I don't like this word, but I guess I'm going to use it in this sense, is functional. You want to make sure that you're actually used to knowing, you basically know how to contract your transverse abdominis. You know how to actually engage your core when you lift things up off the ground. There are things we do throughout our daily lives that involve our core, and if you're just not used to bracing your core because you always have a belt on, what if you're at home one day and you don't have a belt on and you have to pick something heavy up and you're just not used to bracing your core because you walk around with your belt all day at the gym? So in that sense, I would, again, I recommend you still train your core. So if you train your core, you only wear it during your big lifts, you're getting the benefits of wearing a belt, but you're not hindering yourself, because that's one of the biggest criticisms of a belt is people say it makes you have a weak core. But if you're not using it through the majority of your lifts, only the big compound ones, and you're training your core as well by itself, then you're kind of killing those two criticisms at the same time while getting the benefits of a belt. So that's my opinion on a belt. But let's just say you do wear a weightlifting belt, how you actually wear one. And I've seen a lot of people talk about this in different opinions. The first opinion that I heard is that when you put it on, you need to put it on super, super, super tight, which is not the case. So when you put it on, just again, you obviously just want to wrap it around your waist, and you should buy one according to the size of you. I got a medium. I got this from Strength Shop USA. They have some good synthetic leather weightlifting belts. This isn't real leather, it's synthetic. So you could check out their stuff. This was for $50 and it was pretty good. So what I'd recommend you do is find a hole that's gonna leave you with some room on. So when I put it on, I have a little bit of room. I can breathe normal, I feel fine. There's a little bit of space in here. There's not too much space though. It's not, if it's falling down, or if you feel like you can fit 2 whole arms in the belt, or if it's falling down, that's, you need to get it a little bit tighter. Now, if you feel like you can't regularly talk or regularly breathe with the belt on either, it's probably too tight. You shouldn't feel like you can't take a pretty good breath in. You should be able to take a pretty deep breath in. So when you find the appropriate size for you, when you find out the correct tightness for you specifically, what you do is you want to take in a big, deep breath of air. You want to take a big, deep belly breath of air. So not necessarily a big, deep breath of air into your chest. So if you take a big, deep breath of air and your chest is expanding and your belly's not necessarily moving, you're taking the breath wrong. So you want it to go directly into your belly. So it's And then from there, you want to press out against the belt. Now, this is opposite to what you would essentially do without a belt. If you're not wearing a belt, you're going to want to cinch down and get everything tight. You don't want to do that with a belt. When you have a belt on, you want to take a big, deep belly breath of air and push out. And when I push out, I can't get my fingers in between myself and the belt. So it's super tight. So it would look like this. And then there's essentially no room, again, between me and the belt. What that's going to do, it's going to create the most intra-abdominal pressure that you can get while you're wearing a belt, and it's going to help protect your spine and increase stability, because we know that if we have increased stability, we can generate more force through whatever lift or modality we're doing. So if it's during a squat, we'll be able to press against the ground. Same thing with the deadlift. If we're more stable from pressing against the belt, we're going to be able to lift more weight. And especially with the overhead press, which is the video that I just did, if we know how to brace and get tight, we're not going to be as wobbly at the top of an overhead press. Now, the one thing that I would recommend you do with a belt too, again, it's just as simple as that for using a belt. It's not too complicated. Again, big, deep belly breath of air and push out against the belt. But some tips when you're doing the actual repetitions is, one, make sure you still remember to breathe. I know a lot of people, and this has happened to me, but I've had friends tell me that when they first used a belt, they held their breath for too long, or they pushed against the belt for too long, and they just didn't generally breathe. So if you do that, you're going to get lightheaded. You feel like you're going to pass out. You might black out, all this bad stuff. So make sure that you still end up breathing in between your repetitions. So for example, in a squat, you would take that big, deep belly breath of air at the top, go down into the hole, and as you come out the hole, you would breathe out, and then in between reps, when you're at the top again, you would reset and take another big breath of air. Because again, essentially, you're going to be using the belt during heavy compound lifts. You're not going to be using a belt during, or you shouldn't really be using a belt during 20, 25, 30 repetitions. And again, that would be personally up to you. So don't hold your breath of air too long. So there you guys have it. If you guys have any questions, comments about weightlifting belts and maybe any specific tips in regards to you, can leave them down below. If you guys want me to go over using the weightlifting belt in different exercises, maybe do exercise specific guides with the weightlifting belt. But in general, it's all the same. You just want to take, again, that big breath of air and push out against the belt to increase that intra-abdominal pressure and help protect your spine, and then help performance in the long run. So again, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.